Welcome everyone to another episode of Future of Data podcast. And in this version, we're doing something interesting and something unique. So last week we started, or last week we started our newsletter, which is designed by our AI algorithm. And many of the our community members said, "Hey, we can't read the whole thing. It's too much of information. And what if you can create this newsletter into a podcast?" So this is one of those opportunities where we sort of, okay, why not? It's some good piece of content and it's good piece of information, and we can chatter and you can join our conversation. At the same point, maybe something interesting come out of this. So this is a test run. So stay with us. And today I'm Vishal, one of the co-designer of Tao, and we have with us Maria, who's our data evangelist. So, Maria, would you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm really glad to be on the show. I'm excited to talk about these topics. I pretty much run around my city talking about these things. So it's great to involve more people in the conversation.
Great, great. So how are things, Maria? I think so. You are from Raleigh. So how are things at Raleigh?
Yeah, it's really busy. We've had quite a number of events that deal with data, and we've had some hackathons, and we've had just recently on Saturday there was a March for Science, and
Nice.
that was more international. It was 600 cities all over the world with thousands of participants, but the global message was the importance of science. There were tons of different reasons for individuals to attend, participate, and march. Some were even as simple as fighting cynicism, and some were more complex into the policies and all the science in between. So we had quite some turnout, and we even had Bill Nye, the science guy, who was speaking
Nice.
on
Nice.
behalf of,
Nice.
yeah, so it was really interesting. There was tons of diversity. I loved the diversity because it was not just the diversity of people, but age groups, different science, different the different sciences, and all of the also like teachers and education. Like
Nice.
the education
And I
industry.
think thank you so much, Maria. So for our audience, Maria is also leading Analytics Club Raleigh. So she is the person when it comes to Raleigh and doing some, and that's why like she's deeply involved in bunch of this humanitarian efforts and sort of data evangelist and social data initiatives. So
Right.
kudos, Maria, on those initiatives. By the way,
Yeah,
pretty
so it's
impressive.
going really well. Thank you for asking.
So, likewise, there was a march of science walk in Boston as well, and
Yes,
loved,
did you
and
see
it was fascinating. It was flooded. It was a lot of interesting conversation. So, I think we should have it. We had a ball. So I think we should have something similar every year. So now let's get to the topic of the day. So we send out this newsletter today. That's Thursday, and now let's dig what Mr. Tao has brought for us. So just to give our friends a perspective. So Tao is one of the AI bot that is a career coach that we at Analytics Week have created. And the cool thing about Tao is we can even tag content, and Analytics Week itself produces a lot of content in a lot of areas, and we sort of aggregate them as well. So we said, why don't we do a fun project and connect Tao to this content and see what Tao can learn from what we like to learn. So that's one of the initiative that we said, okay, let's go ahead and do something fun about this. So this particular newsletter is created from Tao. It is meant for the web audience. So we are also creating a separate version for every city that you must have got in your inbox. But this one for the podcast, we will only be covering the web part of the newsletter, and to keep the content and sort of test run different. We have made every city with a different content, so Tao can learn which city has which flavor, and soon we'll probably in couple of months we'll have more data into which side of our community and beyond love reading what kind of content, and we are hoping that in next 6 7 8 months we should be able to provide this capability to individual one of us. I think that will be a lot of fun. Like if I get the newsletter that I want to read, that is so much fun. Wouldn't you agree, Maria?
Yeah, especially, dealing with what's happening locally, because you have the events and different things like that for your area.
Yes. Yeah. So let's get to the fun part now. So the newsletter itself, so it comes with a cover of the week, and I think this time Mr. Tao has picked, or Miss Tao. Actually, we should categorize the gender for our AI. That reminds me.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe it's a third gender. Maybe I don't know. That's like a AI should have their own gender now.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, exactly. Right.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, we should have that. So Tao has picked out this Dilbert cartoon about opinions, and I think it's a very fun take on opinion. So basically, Dilbert is saying that what is informed opinion, and if it's informed, then how come it's an opinion, right? So if opinion has to be somewhat made up, and pretty much that's the whole point that they're debating between. Hey, to say that your opinion matters, you should put some data behind it, and the moment you have informed opinion, it's no more informed, it's no more opinion. So it's a very clever take on the two word of informed or data driven opinion. So that's fun. So on the local,
I think it was funny how he ended with "your whole life is a lie," because as we start to get more and more analytics and we start to get more people interested in different things, those belief systems that we've had that we've just kind of hearsay or have had some heuristic about, we now have some data and we can use that to drive those things. So I think that will change a lot of people's lives.
I know, and I think I can see myself using this interesting clip art in one of my corporate presentations. I think it's a fun to say this is almost like every company is suffering through the same notion that maybe what's the gut feel now when everything is driven by data, and then at some point, and I think it's also said that if you ask people, they probably say we want faster horse, right? So at some point, opinion matters, and it's like, yeah, I feel for Dilbert.
Yeah.
So yeah. So on the next one, so we have local events and sessions. So I think the 3 events, and I like the way sort of he picked 3 events. So one event is Power Apps in depth by Archana Nair. So discussion around Power Apps, and then the second one is Open Data Science chief CXO conversation. So I think
I know I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's I think it's fun. We should all know, because I think one of the things even that what we feel from our end is how are leaders thinking about this thing, because I think leader has primarily been a title for wisdom or for skill, right? Now with the advent of data, it's almost like you're directly challenging the decision making process of a skill, right? So
yeah.
I agree with you that we should be tuned into how data science, like how what they are doing and what they are using to sort of for the decision making.
Yeah, and the great thing about these are that even if you cannot attend them, so many people are either tweeting about it or putting it up on social media, so you can find out, or at least like maybe they're having a live stream and you can watch it while it's going on, or you can watch it later, or you can just be involved in like some of the, I like how when people tweet and they like tweet quotes of someone who is speaking, something that has really a lot of substance, and you're just like, that is something to think about today, so that's a great thing to know about all the events that are happening, because you can find out some information about them on social media somewhere.
That's interesting. I think that's rightly said. And the third one is so it's, I think it's clever. So it is from Seattle.
Yeah.
But it's a certification prep. I think it's an online course as well. So project management, PMP. I don't know what's going on here. So, but I'm assuming that as a data science professional, I think project management is another area that we as sort of data scientists or data evangelists or anyone who's prepping with data, this is one of the art form that we need to be somewhat accustomed with when dealing with what's going on. What do you
Yeah,
think,
there's
Maria?
so many pieces in this data science. There's just so many pieces, so many parts, and they have to fit together a certain way. Having an idea of the whole scope and being able to envision the macro and the micro parts at the same time is really important.
That's true. That's true. Um, so now moving to the next section. So analytics week bites. So this is I think one of the areas where we pick, or at least our Tao picks, the local blogs of analytics published by or on Analytics Week platform. So and the three picks that they have picked is big data facts. I think this is one of my old article in which sort of I was trying to sort of pull out all the big data stat. I think for my internal project, I was doing some research on big data facts, and
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, if I'm doing that research, why don't I just let people know as well? I think it's one of those initiatives. Must check it out. I think it's an interesting. So on go to analyticsweek.com, and by the way, you can just type in these things, and you should see on the search what I'm saying. So say big data facts, and it should pull out. The second one is how the hybrid cloud has already doomed your data center. So I think this is another interesting perspective, right? So hybrid cloud, third party cloud services, and I think it's a constant battle. I think in this article we're discussing how hybrid cloud is changing the traditional norm of data or traditional meaning of data centers. Because earlier it used to be, if I'm a company, if a mid-sized company, I should invest into the idea of data center. But now we have these ginormous players that have really optimized the cost centers for my company. Why would I need to invest in my IT infrastructure when I can just use their robust infrastructure with marginal cost than it would take for me to maintain that? And by the way, it's not my core competency to begin with, right? So I think that's one of the very clever way that how it's dooming the data center business as such. But I think at the end of the day, I think we would still be needing those cloud services, but there'll be just less number with more infrastructure, right? So will not be probably needing this third party. And if you are into that space where you provide data center, I'm sure you must be feeling some kind of pain. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, there's definitely fear that's involved with the unknown of what's going to happen with that. But I like the way that folks are using it as a hybrid because there's a transitionary part, right? And you can't just jump from one to the other, and it accounts for the time that it takes to evolve into the new technology. So with the hybrid, where it allows there to be some kind of bridge in between the data center and the cloud, and that will help people along the way. Not everyone is going to need it. It just depends on whether what products do you have, or what you're trying to store, what kind of information, and in what formats. It just there's a lot of pieces that it depends on. But once you have an understanding of that, then you'll know where you fit on that bridge.
I think that's a very fair point. That having that option of data centers and cloud, and I think consolidation of resources is definitely changing that market for everyone. So DevOps, I think keep a close eye on this business and how it's converging for the good of the entire industry. So the third is lava storm democratizing big data analytics in face of skill shortage. So I think this is another explosion of services and products to pretty much automate the analytics behavior. So not even lava storm. There are a lot of other players as well that how they sort of they rise to the occasion and helping businesses circumvent the skill shortage by providing them this automated capabilities or automated services that ultimately business could use at again marginally cost, then at least maintain a guy or a gal or professional within your company and still getting almost equal or better results. So that's another area sort of where we are seeing a lot of these services providers emerging, and I think this particular article covers that aspect. So, what do you think, Maria?
Yeah, I definitely we'll definitely need more and more people to be able to use the technology. So it's I think for me, it's a personally, it's like an outreach issue that more people knowing about the technologies and how accessible they are and trying to use that in their education, will they'll have more opportunities as well. I mean, people, they scroll on Facebook and they scroll on social media and they don't realize, you are already building skills, so you can take that to another level.
That's a great
It's
point.
not as difficult, it's not always as difficult as it might appear, but people do have some basics and starts because they're already involved in the culture that way.
So, Maria, I think that's an that's an interesting perspective. So, what do you think? I think this it hits another very critical area that we can, and I'm taking slightly tangential road just to have some conversation out of this. So, skill shortage, right? So there is, I think, so
Mm-hmm.
there are two perspectives to this. So one perspective is get automation fill in for the missing roles. That's what this
Mm-hmm.
particular article is all about, right? How Lava Storm can actually do these things, and you can save on your cost. The other thing sort of is create something called citizen data scientist, right? Creating this idea of um, people from other verticals getting some know-how of what's going on and bring them on board.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular favorite? So considering these capability like ant versus humans, do you have
Yeah,
any film?
I do. I do. I feel very strongly about this. I have um, a passion for citizen data scientists, and I do believe that there's a range, and levels, and there are places for everything along that range. So where AI belongs is with more advanced and faster processes and for efficiency. And then there are things that just human beings have to do. And those things, our human beings should have the education and the capability and the access to the tools to be able to do that, because there's so much creativity involved with certain processes to be more efficient anyway. The AI, I feel, should just take care of those things we've already got locked down.
Interesting. And Maria, by the way, your background is looking amazing. I'm almost feeling like going out and uh, take a walk.
So
So
it is
very
like
tempting.
super been raining. It's been super raining the last 3 or 4 days here.
Okay.
So, we're about to like dial up Noah and ask him, where's the ark at? I think I have him in my Rolodex somewhere.
So
But it's been
interesting.
really raining, so I was like, I can't go outside like I usually do. So I need to have something that feels like I'm near that nature. So
Interesting.
I
So
try.
now let's go to the next section. It's news bites, and this is, I think, I'm particularly very fascinated about. So, and this is, I think, from my personal experience. So over the last couple of years, we have been asked what's happening in the news on data analytics. What are some of the interesting sort of mergers and acquisitions happening? What are some of the news articles that are coming up? And we have all these verticals. So I think it predates the Tau version. So it's pre Tau. We created this algorithm to just go out on a scavenger hunt and look for some interesting articles, and look
Hmm.
at some of those categories and see if it finds anything interesting. And we started capturing that, and I think that became another sort of our content pool, in which we capture all the news articles that's happening around the world to keep us ahead in what's going on, and we try to keep the news as current as possible. So I think we even delete the old ones. I still have to check whether that's still relevant. But yes, so this one particular, so it's talking about three interesting sort of areas that definitely we'll converse about. So first is survey. 81% of healthcare CIOs cite data security as top priority. Huh. So that's an interesting take. So I wonder who are those 19%. I think that
Yeah,
those guys must be a keeper. So like finding like those, I feel sorry for those 19% guys. To be very frank,
yeah.
what do you think?
Well, I know it's hard to get your even your own medical data.
I know.
So that, that shows that there are definitely areas that we need to focus on. But this health, it's very important that there is security in that, because it's very easy to get crossed for so many different reasons. Like I've heard stories about social security numbers and certain numbers, birthdays and things like that, where individuals had same names or birthdays, and just like social security number was different a little bit, and those things are very sensitive. So it's important that we
Right.
do have security for it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So healthcare and security should be like synonymous in many ways, considering it has this sensitive data.
Yeah,
So I think
and I
that's
think
I
once
agree
we
with
get
you.
it Sorry. I think once we get it right, though, then our channels for access will be better,
That's
because
true.
then we'll feel more confident and secure that we have that information protected.
And I think, and I have a hunch that the 20% would have security in their top five. So it's not their top priority, but at least it's out there. I hope so. And if
Hmm.
not, I think it's to their CEO. Maybe look for another CIO. I think this is not the right, because yes, I think you're just one ginormous lawsuit away from being evicted from the map. So yeah.
Right.
So interesting. And the second news topic for us is um, anticipating risk in petroleum industry. So it's published in petroleum economist, and it's part of the risk analytics sort of vertical there. So this is another area. I think we don't talk a lot about oil and gas industry. But I think from every interaction that I had with these with either Schlumbergers or Enron or Chevron or British Petroleum, I think even in my latest sort of conversation with guys at Petro Canada, anticipating risk, I think they have massive setups. I think they have every drill costs them billions of dollars to sort of create and yield. Understanding risk of those entities, it's extremely critical, and I think that's and it's interesting that how much these industries are old school. I think we never realized that they are very very sort of, because of the regulation and all that, and then changing. Imagine changing a deep water sort of valve, um, which is already on a live yielding refinery. It is hard. So these guys are getting all sort of toned down infrastructure. They're old, obsolete. Now anticipating risk is, I think that's, and in fact I think anticipating risk has been even with my latest conversation with a guy at FICO. He was saying that anticipating risk is it's one of the emerging area to find out that can we predict the failure. And I think especially extreme weather, and I think with all this global warming and all, we are seeing extreme weather conditions. So now that means for securing and ensuring their infrastructure, they need to have these models in place. So what do you think, Maria?
Well, I have a little bit of experience with the oil and gas industry, because I did help um, build a database for an oil recycling plant a couple years ago, and it was pretty crazy, because things are, like you said, were very old school. We were using Microsoft Access, and we were using some of the older technologies, but everything is really changing. Like things change so much, because like the barrel of oil, that changes, and like the weather factors change, and there's so much changing at the same time that it's very important to be able to have a scope of understanding all of the areas of risk, because
Right.
it's so unpredictable all the time.
That's true. That's, I think that's absolutely well said. And I think the third suggestion is boosting sales productivity with sales enablement and analytics. I think as cheesy as this title sound, I think it's all the more relevant. Sales and marketing had been one of the first initial adopters of data driven analytics um, as a field to sort of to improve their business and lower their cost and sort of improve their yield quality. So I think that's another area of interest is how um, you can actually improve sales productivity by using better analytics and better enablement is just another word for um, uh, making things possible in a way using the platform. So that's an interesting read on. And I think I like sort of how in this Tao has pulled total different areas for the I don't know what's going on there,
Yeah,
but it's like
yeah.
none of these guys actually match somehow. So that's interesting.
A little bit for everyone, right?
I don't know for I hope so. So I think that's the news bites um, on the newsletter. So now let's go to the fun section that I personally love to read about. I think so. Featured courses. I think this is another, and even this is coming out of a need. A lot of people ask us, what courses should I take? And
Yes.
so
Yeah, I
we
get that
said,
all the time.
Tao, go and find bunch of free ones or at least the low cost ones. So I think the one that Tao is recommending right now is either free or marginally any sort of cost to pay for it. So this one is talking about tackling real data challenges, and I think that's a very good beginner to intermediate course. Tackling data, and that's I think that's the primal job for a data evangelist. You can say data uh, an analyst. You can say. So there are a lot of things that needs we need to understand. We need to understand the ethics of data. We need to understand governance of data. We need to understand the privacy. We need to understand analysis paralysis. So there are a lot of area which are very sort of initial thoughts to get the foundation right. But if they are done correctly, these are like fascinating cultural changes that you are bringing to the company. If you know what you're dealing with, what do you think, Maria, on this?
Yeah, I think this is also great because I get a lot from the students, that they just don't feel prepared for the workforce even after they've completed their master's program in data science. So having resources that they can look at that have tangible business use cases, it helps them because those are some of the things that I think there's a gap in with the universities. They get a lot of the tools and they get a great education, but some of these real data challenges show and highlight what you are talking about that is kind of missing in the traditional education that they get.
That's true. Interesting. So on the next one, it's suggesting a good read. And by the way, I'm one of the biggest user of this particular suggestion from Tao on what to read, because I think I'm fascinated with books, and that's one of the primal source of where I get my sort of majority of learning. So this week, Tao is suggesting Future of Professions: How Technology Will Transform the World of Human Experts. I think so. This is personally maybe Tao is talking about itself. I think this is what Tao is actually, right. So it's just maybe he's putting it there just to let us know that he exists. So I think this is one of the interesting area of how the future of professions, right? How AI and we individual will go together and uh, as Susskind, I think so. Daniel Susskind, and so Richard Susskind is a lawyer. He is coming from the legal background, by the way. So giving an interesting perspective of like how the world of how the work is changing, and how technology is coping up. And I think in one of the recent podcasts or recent, I think online radio interview, I was asked this question about like about this future of work trend, and I think one of the things that came out of the conversation was throughout the year we use technology to grow, Like
Mm-hmm.
calculator, we use primarily we use computer to sort of type our papers. We do a lot of these things. But when we come to a job, we were asked to compete with technology, and
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the interesting perspective, right? So
Mm-hmm.
culturally, we have always considered tech as our friend, but suddenly, at a later age, because of the idea of when you put sort of numbers into perspective, we are competing with these technologies, right? So why not we use them to our advantage? Why not sort of we use them as our friend? We stay
Mm-hmm.
as a friend, and I think, and there was a cultural sort of significance, by the way. So when our ancestors, monkeys or chimpanzees, whatever you call them, when humans were coming up, when we were evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chimpanzees have, I think, 3 to 4 times more strength than humans. They could have killed us. They could have, if they would have thought that we are competing with them, they would have stopped the entire race. But the very fact that we exist, right? So they used us and we used them for growth. And I think that now we are at a moment where sort of we are at par with tech
Mm-hmm.
as our next offspring that will come out of this evolution. So I think we as humans have to sort of learn to work with it. Otherwise, it will be like yeah, it'll be a massive problem, because if the computers are told to compete with us,
Yeah.
there is no way we're gonna win that battle anytime soon.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Collaboration. I'm all for it.
Yes, that's true. Collaboration. It's yeah, that's
Let's
interesting.
live in harmony.
I know. So I'm a big fan of all the future of work books. So this is one of those, and I think I should add it into my bucket list so far. So now let's talk about tips and tricks. So this is one of the areas in our website where sort of we ask experts about their tips and tricks on what they think about some of the cultural hacks, some of the opportunities that sort of people should capture. And this one talks about data aids, not replace judgment. And this is so right. I think in even in sort of my conversation with a lot of leadership, it was mind-boggling to see that how many sort of the conversation start with, can data help me decide, and then they say data, and they ask data to decide on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, one of the thing that that's a big no-no, right? So as long as the idea of intuition, the idea of cognitive intuition is still so relevant in figuring
Mm-hmm.
out the answer. Ideally, AI or robots, they are not meant, at least till now, to have an intuition. They
Mm-hmm.
are not meant to sort of, because if you ask AI to capture everything that has happened to for the decision making, it may be analysis paralysis deciding it for you. So that's still
Mm-hmm.
not. We humans have a tendency to sort of ignore and sort of appreciate certain things which are relevant here. So that's why I think it's a well said suggestion. What do you think?
No, I agree. I agree because there's hypothesis, and we can like really get deep into a hypothesis, and then have a lot of fears and things that go along with that cloud our judgments. Um, but if we kind of just keep perspective on what's helpful and keep a relationship with the technology where it's like we have a relationship with using it and not codependent on it, then I think, like that will lead us to more collaborative partnerships with the technology.
That's true. That's a nicely said, Maria. So the next section talks about data science job Q&A, and I am thinking in this one, Tav is trying to impress you, Maria. I think it's
Oh, really?
somewhat it's somewhat relevant to you. I think. So
Well, it was my
explain.
birthday on Sunday, so
Hey, by the way, belated happy birthday.
thanks. Maybe
So
that's a good reason for it to try.
yeah, I'm
A
looking
good
forward to,
little
yeah. So I think he threw a book for me and a Q&A for you. So I think AI is trying really hard to be friends. So I think that's just good.
yeah.
So explain likely difference between administrative data sets and data sets gathered from experimental studies. What are likely
Mm.
problem encounters with admin data, and how do experimental methods help alleviate these problems? I think, Maria, so in our conversation, I hear that a lot. Like, you have been doing a lot of research for government agencies and city and state and all that. Do you want to take a stab at it?
Okay, so
So, what are some of the advantages of or disadvantages of doing this public studies or experimental research?
yeah, the disadvantage is just the time that it takes. It takes a long time. And you've got to, you're trying to get all of this, whatever you're using to do the studies, whether it's surveys, because a lot of it is like social, especially if it's on, certain things that we're trying to make breakthroughs about in science. We don't, like we discussed gender in the very beginning of this segment, right? Some of these topics we don't have previous reference points of collected data that we could already use. We have to go and start from scratch and make those kind of things. So certain studies take a lot of time, depending on what it involves. So that's why I think that the collaboration is so important, though, because someone that is doing this kind of study and others that are doing similar studies, you guys can share what you've learned. And I'm a really big fan of like Marie and Pierre Curie, who with radiation, they made no patents and they just kept everything open. And that really allowed for the discoveries and the innovation and the technologies that come out of it to have gotten so far, because there were many women who dealt with the technology and with radiation and those discoveries, because it was open. Whatever they learned, they shared. And then their daughters continued on with those studies, and then they shared that with other women. And so I just think like everyone kind of like being more open and transparent a little bit. I know that there's guidelines and there's differences on what technologies you're working on and everything, but certain collaborations will help speed up those processes.
No, I think so. You're capturing a bunch of interesting points. I think so. Being a public study, so you get a lot of data, right? I think that's even like from my perspective. If someone reach me and say, Vishal, I want your data, I probably would not respond. But if State of Mass or Fed or survey, they reach out to us, probably I'll respond, right? So that I think that's the expectation that you'll get a lot of data, and then these are important, right? So there's already a system in place, because now typically you doing, as a thing you rightly said, doing a big study, it takes forever, right? So now getting optimized at doing those, you need to do these things again and again, and one bunch of these federal program, and I think it's an advantage and disadvantage both, consider thinking where you lie on this. But if it's a long program or long run program, then the systems are already in place to do that. And I think the other thing also you briefly touched in your response, finding so anonymizing data. So like, if suppose I have, say, all the Raleigh, how many people are married or single or whatever, right? Or gender. If I need to peg a particular sort of if I need to slice and dice further into the analysis, it is very tightly scoped. So I think that's another thing, that, right? So playing along with these experimental data, it's a nightmare. Getting approval, because obviously you can't just go back and say take the approval again from everyone who actually participated in the survey. So it's very difficult to change those things. So that's one of the disadvantages there is, and then always a paranoia on privacy. I think privacy is a word right now you can pretty much attach to anything nowadays because of all these hacks and everything. So that's another problem with this sort of industrious or this experimental studies. If I'm giving it to you, would you appreciate the privacy of the data? Like, would you accidentally not release? And I think even in one of the study that I was overlooking by one of the retailers, web retailers, and they tried. So it was an interesting. I won't give out on the use case as such, but but accidentally they released an information which is not still in compliance with the anonymity, but it could give out certain kind of sort of bracket of people who would have participated in this. So, like doing that, having sort of those sort of ability to move and change the study is a nightmare. It's very hard. So I think, to recap, on a plus side, we get a lot of data to have fun with, a lot of analysis that you wouldn't have captured otherwise. Systems are already in place. Expectations is already in people's mind to participate. On the other side, they're very inflexible. They're not very flexible. Very tedious to work. Scope is tightly defined. You can't play along with the scope, and you have to think through if any use case comes later that you can't do anything with that, because that data is already logged in and you're not supposed to increase the scope after the fact. So there are some of the challenges and opportunities, as well as some of the advantages of using these research data. And thank you, Maria, for pitching in on that. So now let's get to the next section, which is the video of the week. And this is, I think, this is a bunch of our talks or whichever we find interesting. Try to push it. And in this one, it's talks. So it is suggesting something, a talk around unraveling the mystery of big data. Very interesting conversation around the initial data preparedness. What the hell is data? What the hell is analysis? What is big data? So I think it's a very interestingly, it's a beginner's talk, but I would say it's a leadership talk as well. Because many times, even in my experience, leaders are the one who are least informed about the capability of big data, and that's, I think, no matter how sad it is, but it is true. And we can understand why, right? Because that's not their, again, they are hired for the skill, they're for experience. But whatever the cutting trends are happening, many times they are there to preserve the culture. That means don't let the new things get in so easily without getting tested. So I can see that perspective, but definitely it's a good video on that to check out, and it's called Unraveling the Mystery of Big Data. Now let's talk about the quote of the week. Data is the new science, and big data holds the answer. What do you think, Maria?
I definitely agree with that. And I just want to say, like, videos like that are what I tell people to just put on and listen to in the background when they're, either driving or doing something else, because then they can pick up the terminology if they're interested in.
That's a very good point. And I think at some point, even I was thinking, I'm a big fan of podcasts, by the way, for the same reason, right? I'm driving, I'm in my car, stuck in a traffic. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And I just put out a podcast. And I think that's why even Future of Data podcast, we probably should convert these talks. I think one thing that I definitely, I am cognizant on, and I think that's personally me, if there's a video that's too enticing to see, if someone is talking about a model that on a screen, I don't want to be tempted to look at that.
To look at it while you're driving, yeah, sure.
Right. I think that's so I don't know. I think I'm having this split thought, because typically I try to, but every now and then I find guilty of. I should not say in public, but of sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it just leads into it. I mean, there's just so much information now. It's available anywhere, and you have very limited amount of time in your life. So, data is the new science, because if you want to learn something, immersion is the quickest way, and we have tons of resources for that. So
interesting. Yes, that's true. So now the quote of the week: new science, data is the new science. I think that's, I don't know, and big data holds the answers. So it's a very hyperbolic statement in itself, by the way. So although I agree, right? So on a very high level, it just
generally,
tells you.
Generally, you agree,
right? It's just saying, hey, be cognizant, right? Be data cognizant. So to the point, that's yes, right? But there is still I think data holds the answer, not necessarily big data, but data holds the answer. So, but like it. I love Pat.
I think it holds the answer, but it's not the answer. We still have to explore the
Yes, that's a
human
good point.
element to make sure the answer answers the question.
And in fact, big data. It's like and this is again personal me. I don't like the word big data. To be very
Yeah.
frank, like it's not telling you any other information besides
Anything.
it's a
Yeah.
useless word. Like
Yeah.
either tell me it's a smart data, I can chew it, but big data. So it's not telling me whether it's useful data, useless data. It's not
Yeah.
telling
We're
me the quality.
outgrowing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a hyperbolic again word. So anytime I see a big data, I just it's like almost the life sucks out of me and saying what the hell. So it's one
Yeah.
of those things. But I agree. Data holds the answer. So I think I totally agree. And Pat is, I think he's one of my old boss. So when I was with EMC, so he was with EMC at one point. Very smart guy.
Yeah.
So
But like you said, for the time, right? At one time,
yes,
this was an important word, and now we're outgrowing it. So we need better.
it's good that we want to be bored with these words, right? Because that means we are growing. At one point, it
Hmm.
was the word that everyone is talking about. So, podcast of the week, Michael O'Connell from Tipco. I did this podcast, I think, a while back with Michael from
Yeah, it's
Tipco.
great.
Very smart guy. I think he's a very smart guy. He talked about how chief analytics officer thinks. I think that's another a very good leadership perspective. What should I and you can check his podcast in this podcast series. I think it's one of the earlier ones, maybe first or second one. And he's one of the brave ones to jump on the podcast when I had when I had no one planned to talk. So he took the risk of s- uh, sitting with me and having a chat. I think very brave guy and very smart guy too. So definitely check that podcast out. Now let's talk about the fact of the week. The Hadoop market is forecasting to grow at a compound annual growth of 58%, surpassing 1 billion by 2020. Hadoop, I think, sure. I think the world has now even gone past that stage. So we have so many things to talk about besides Hadoop too. So good
Hmm.
problem to have. What do you think, Maria?
No, I agree. I agree. Now that it was, where it was very important. It's still very important, but there are also other options too.
Yes. And now I think there were some shout outs on the Tau program on the newsletter, and these are like shameless plug. So if you
Hmm.
don't want to hear our shameless plug, I think this is the right point to tune out. But I think if you're looking for job, if you're looking for coaching, we are introducing a bunch of interesting services through Tau. So Tau would be, I think that makes me believe Tau would be the Watson for career. Hey IBM, see, we called it first. So
Yeah.
so so
Can you tell
basically
us a little
the
bit about Tao, Vishal? Tell us a little
yeah.
bit about why it's
So
important
I
for
think
the career.
so really we started so Tau itself is an idea of connecting similar mindsets together so they can grow together, and similarly get some content and give this similar mindset a relevant content, and based on their sort of ingestion of the content alter the content. So we want to bring all the smart content to smartest people, or smarter people to make them smartest. So that's the idea behind Tau, and obviously the whole idea believes in the fact that if AI can take away jobs, Tau is an AI that will help keep one. I think that's the idea we want to push it out, and bunch of programs that we are running which would be helpful. So there's a campaign called Never Analyze Alone. So this is
Hmm.
one of the
I
sort
like
of
that one.
one of the idea that we should create a network of friends and buddies, and Tau also are dealing with a lot of businesses. We are working with Fortune 100 companies on various capacity. So if anyone wants to work with our teams, either contractual or full time basis, do let us know. We are always on a lookout for interesting talent, and tune them in with interesting products and services. And Tau itself will connect you to your right buddy networks eventually. And then there is X network, X by Tau program, in which if you're looking for job, if you're looking for opportunities, X by Tau is a platform in which we only deal with the smartest of 5.1% of the candidates. So we'll pick you, we'll select you, we'll interview you. If you make it through, then we'll be working with the smartest of the smart people, and with everyone else too. We'll try to do in some of the recommendation engine. We'll get you in, and we'll find you your smartest fit for a job or a contractual opportunities. So all of these programs are tagged to Tau. So they have an element of self-learning and learning and adoption and evolution in it. So check it out. Go to x.tau.ai and sign up on that.
And this is for talent, those that are looking for a position in data science, or is for companies that are looking for data scientists, or both?
That's a good question, Maria. So these are for both. For if companies, so we are working with Fortune 100 companies and beyond. So we are working with some of the smartest data science use case providers in the industry, and our job is to find them the interesting and the most amazing talent, whether it's through us or whether directly working with them. But we are always on a lookout of interesting businesses. And we are also on the awareness campaigns too. So we are also making other businesses aware that, hey, you could actually use these smart folks and get some interesting use case out of this. So that's another area. So that brings us to the end of this newsletter podcast. Do let us know what you think.
I do want to say something, Vishal, about the newsletter.
Yes.
I really like how the newsletter is laid out. I've seen quite a few other newsletters, and when you first open a newsletter, you just kind of, I don't know if other people do it, but I kind of just skim through to see how long it is, to see if I can really sit there and pay attention to it, or if I have to come back to it later. And I like this setup because you can kind of do that, and you can say, oh, this tip of the week is really important. I want to read that right now, but I'm going to come back for that, for the news bites later. And you can really see the different areas that are highlighted here in the newsletter. So I really like how it's laid out.
I think you're absolutely right. And you know what? And this is bite into the future. So this is one of the secrets. And if guys, if you can close your ears, I want to talk something very secretive with Maria on our future of our product. So I think one of the things that we want to achieve through this. So Tau is learning around various segments, right? What's going on. At some point, I want to give everyone every day 5 pieces of content that will make them smart. So this big. So I think that's the end game, right? So eventually, you play on with this, and then Tau will sort of pick it up and say, hey, have this thing. These 5 things every day. If you just keep on chewing, it's like your daily vitamin.
Yeah, your mind vitamin, huh?
Great. So that's the. So guys, now you can open your ears. So we're done discussing this. So with that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And if you really love this, like, subscribe, and share this video. And if you don't like this, still like, subscribe, and share this video because it may be useful for someone else. And you don't know, maybe that someone else is right around you. So we do appreciate you spending time with us. Do give us your feedback. There would be a link on where you can submit feedback on the newsletter as well as on this podcast. Thank you, Maria. What do you think? It was a fun chat.
Thank you, Vishal. This was great. I look forward to next time.
Beautiful. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on a